Hi, kindergarten. You ready for a cozy read aloud? I'm going to read one of my favorites, The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore. I know we read it in school, but I could read this every day. It's that good. I think I'm going to take off the dust jacket though, because otherwise it might be a little distracting. Alright, here goes. The Fantastic Flying Books of Mr. Morris Lessmore. Written by William Joyce and illustrated by William Joyce and Joe Bloom. Now let's see, how will we do this? I want to make sure that you can see the pictures, but I really need to see the words. Okay, this might work. Morris Lessmore loved words. He loved stories. He loved books. His life was a book of his own writing, one orderly page after another. He would open it every morning and write of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. But every story has its upsets. One day the sky darkened, the winds blew and blew. Till everything that Morris knew was scattered. Even the words of his book. He didn't know what to do or which way to go. So he began to wander and wander. Then a happy bit of happenstance came his way. Rather than looking down, as had become his habit, Morris Lessmore looked up. Drifting through the sky above him, Morris saw a lovely lady. She was being pulled along by a festive squadron of flying books. That looks like fun, being carried off by books. Morris wondered if his book could fly, but it couldn't. It would only fall to the ground with a depressing thud. The flying lady knew Morris simply needed a good story, so she sent him her favorite. This is her favorite. You might recognize it. The book was an amiable fellow, that means friendly, and urged Morris to follow him. So the book is saying, come follow me, Morris. The book led him to an extraordinary building where many books apparently nested. Isn't that an interesting word to use about the books? They nested. What do you know that nests? Morris slowly walked inside and discovered the most mysterious and inviting room he had ever seen. It was filled with the fluttering of countless pages, and Morris could hear the faint chatter of 1,000 different stories, as if each book was whispering an invitation to adventure. Then his new friend flew up to him and landed on his arm. It held itself open, as if hoping to be read. The room rustled to life. And so Morris's life among the books began. Look at all the books with legs. Where are they going? They're following Morris. Morris tried to keep the books in some sort of order, but they always mixed themselves up. The tragedies, those are sad books, they needed cheering up and would visit with the comedies, those are funny books. The encyclopedias, which are big non-fiction books full of information, they would be weary of facts and would relax with the comic books and fictions. All in all, it was an agreeable jumble. Morris found great satisfaction in caring for the books, gently fixing those with fragile bindings and unfolding the dog-eared pages of others. Sometimes Morris would get lost in a book and scarcely emerge for days. There are some French words on this page. Here he is, getting lost in a book. Morris liked to share the books with others. Sometimes it was a favourite that everyone loved, and other times he found a lonely little volume whose tale was seldom told. That means a book that maybe has been forgotten and hasn't been read in a long time. Everyone's story matters, said Morris, and all the books agreed. And I agree with that too. Everyone's story matters. At night, after all the stories that needed telling had been told, and everyone had settled down to their proper places on the shelves, the great big dictionary would get in the last word. A dictionary is a big book that explains what words mean. It starts at A and it goes all the way to Z. It was then that Morris would once again write in his own book. He wrote of his joys and sorrows, of all that he knew and everything that he hoped for. The days passed. So did the months. And then the years. And years. And Morris Lessmore became stooped and crinkly. But the books never changed. Their stories stayed the same. Now his old friends took care of him, the way he had once cared for them, and they read themselves to him each night. Then, one day, he filled the last page in his book. He looked up and said with a bittersweet sigh, "I guess it is time for me to move on." There he is, writing in his book for the last time. The books were sorry, but they understood. Morris put on his hat and took his cane. As he went to the door, he turned and smiled, then waved goodbye. "I'll carry you all in here," he said, and he pointed to his heart. The books waved their pages, and Morris Lessmore flew away. And as he flew, he changed back to the way he'd been that long ago day when they'd all first met. The books were quiet for a while. Then they noticed that Morris Lessmore had left something behind. "It's his book," said his oldest friend. And inside was Morris's story. All of his joys and sorrows, all that he knew, and everything that he hoped for. Then the books heard a small, expectant sound. There in the doorway was a little girl. She looked around with wonder. Then something fantastic happened. Morris Lessmore's book flew up to her and opened its pages. The girl began to read. And so our story ends as it began. With the opening of a book. The end. So that's the story of Mr. Morris Lessmore and his fantastic flying books. And I love it because I do think books are magical. And I do think it's a good idea to have your own book to write of all your joys and sorrows and everything that you hope for. By kindergarten.